Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission for June 22nd. If you have a cell phone or some other device that makes noise, you might want to turn it down now. I'm going to do mine. Before we start today, we have two new Planning Commission members with us. Rusty LaForge, who has been appointed at large. He's both a CPA and an attorney, and he's general counsel to Southwest Bank Corp. He's served on the MAPS 3 Advisory Board and serves on the Park Subcommittee of that board. He also serves on the boards of the Urban League and the Foundation of the Oklahoma City Public Schools. We're very glad to have him. Welcome aboard. We have also with us today Asa Highsmith, who's been appointed to sit in the Ward 6 seat. He's an architect, planner, and small business owner who seems to be the ideal millennial. He's an ideal Ward 6 demographic resident. He lives and works downtown, midtown, and bikes rather than drives, and he's focused on a future that's not built around privately operated transportation. So he's involved in the OKC Midtown Urban Renewal Plan, serves on the Midtown Redevelopment Corporation, so the Midtown Board. Is that right?
Yeah. Do I need to do something? Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I actually just resigned to focus on this, but okay. I was on it.
He's helping both UConn and the Village bring their communities into the new century, and in his spare time, he works with the Urban Land Institute and the Festival of the Arts, so welcome aboard. For those of you who are here for the very first time, if there is an item on the agenda that you want to speak to us about, out on the table outside, there's a little form that looks sort of like this that you can sign up for and give it to one of these nice people down here who make sure we get it. The way this works is we'll have the applicant on each item come forward and tell us why they're here and what they need, and then we may or may not ask them some questions, and then we'll have those people who are here to speak either in opposition or support of an item come forward and speak, and we'll ask whatever questions we have of them as well. I guess the first order of business is the receipt of the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting for June the 8th. Do I have a motion?
Moved. Second. Approval.
I have a motion and a second to receive the minutes of the June 8th Planning Commission meeting. All in favor? Oh, would you cast your votes, please? And they are received. We're not working?
I guess it's 6, it's not.
Am I doing it wrong?
No, I don't think so.
Is the switch turned on the side? I think you're sitting wrong. Maybe you're in the wrong seat because you're in Ward 5 seat. Scoot down maybe.
Oh.
Try that.
Am I?
Yeah, because this is Ward 5. So scoot down and see if that one work. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
On the CD chart I saw today.
Correct. Okay. Well, this is on, but it's not working.
You should be 6.
Try no. Can you switch your vote to no?
No? Neither one? Okay, there'll be a small pause while we deal with technical issues. Okay, we'll take your vote verbally then. The minutes are received. Next item on the agenda is continuance requests.
We have received several requests for continuance, and I will name those off. So on your agenda, item B22 for case PUD 1642, to defer that to July 13th. Item B23 for case SPUD 982, defer to July 13th. Item B24 for case SPUD 983, defer to July 13th. Item B25 for case C6892, defer to July 13th. Item B26 for case PUD 1645, defer to August 24th. Item B27 on your agenda for case CE 933, defer to February 8th, 2018. And item B28 on your agenda for case C6895 is withdrawn.
I need a motion and a second on the uncontested continuances.
Motion. Second.
A motion and a second on the uncontested continuances. Please cast your votes. Did it work?
His is worse, but because he's sitting in the wrong seat, it's not. So I, like, Ward 6, that one should be off.
I'm doing that.
The continuance requests are approved. We have new continuance requests or additional continuance requests?
2 new requests for continuance for item B16 on your agenda for case PC 10498 to defer to July 13th, and item B21 on your agenda for case PUD 1644, defer to July 13th.
I need a motion and a second on the,
Move for additional continuances. Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue items number 16 and 21. Would you cast your votes, please? And they're continued?
It's not really, it's still not working.
Is the board just not working?
I don't know. We're going to have to struggle along here. Do I have any requests for continuance from anyone in the audience? Somehow audience doesn't sound quite right, but those of you who are present here today? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to our public hearings.
Under the consent docket, we have 8 items, and I believe we're going to ask to pull one off that, and I will read those items. Case number 1 is ABC 889 for an alcoholic beverage permit in the C3 district located at 3033 North May Avenue. Item 2 is ABC 890 for an alcoholic beverage consumption permit for PUD 1048. Item 3 is ABC 891 for an ABC2 overlay at 14424 North May Avenue. Item 4 is ABC 892 for an alcoholic beverage overlay located at 5301 Southwestern Avenue. Item 5 is ABC 893, alcoholic beverage consumption overlay at 436 Southwest 59th Street. Item 6 is case C6904, the final plat of Braxton, Section 3. Item 7 is C6905, the final plat of Lincoln Boulevard Industrial Edition. And item 8 is ED 218. It's a dedication easement located south of Wilshire and west of Hudson Avenue.
But we are going to pull item 8 off the consent docket. So is there any other item that's currently on the consent docket that anyone here today wishes to be heard on before we vote to approve them? No? Then I'll take a motion and a second.
Move motion. Second.
The motion is second to approve the items on the consent docket, items 1 through 7. Would you cast your votes, please? They are approved.
So item 8 will go under items requiring separate vote, and that's case ED 218. Dedicate Wilshire Creek Boulevard and adjacent drainage easements to the public.
The applicant come forward for us, please.
Good afternoon, Mark Zidzow, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. I'm with Johnson & Associates. We are representing the applicant. We received a comment from Fire that they are requiring some sort of easement or a cul-de-sac at the south end of the street. What we're asking for is approval today to work with Fire before this goes to City Council to work out a public easement.
And how do we feel about that?
I met with Fire, and they're fine with that if we add a TE that says that staff will not process the application to City Council until the turnaround at the end of the terminus of the street is worked out.
And Are you agreeable to that?
Yes.
So I need a motion and a second on item, oh, I'm sorry, that's right, there are people here who want to be heard on this. Mr. Scott Spradling.
I was just here in case the issue came up about this evening.
And Mr. Carlos Johnson. So you're good with the idea of the TE and that resolution being done before we get to council? Okay, I need a motion and a second to approve item number 8, ED 218, with a TE that the issues with respect to the cul-de-sac or whatever it is that fire is going to require will be done between now and city council.
I move the item adding T number 3. They won't process the application to cancel until they get agreement from Public Works regarding access.
Second.
I have a motion and a second with the addition of that TE. If you cast your votes, please. And it is approved.
Okay.
We're okay.
I think Please didn't get there. Everybody's sitting in the wrong chair. Can we test the knowledge? Try it one more time. Let's test it. There we go. We're good?
Item number 9 is SPUD 981 to rezone 12017 Northwest Expressway from SPUD 638 to SPUD 981.
Good afternoon, Mark Grubbs on behalf of the applicant, 1819 South Morgan Road. What we have today before you is a SPUD that is in place of the existing SPUD, with the only amendment being signage. Brahms has this property under contract and needs the signage amendment in order to close on this property. Originally, when they notified me, they wanted bigger. But I've talked them down, told them that they would definitely have to have a monument sign. So what we're proposing in the SPUD is a 30-foot monument sign that's covered in stone. What I would say is a classy representation signage, monument sign for Brahms. The sign would actually, due to the existing waterline easement across the frontage of this property, the sign would have to be placed at the back, at the front building limit line, essentially, of the Brahms building as proposed. I have also, I'll show you those in a second. There's several reasons that they need that signage. One, we're on Northwest Expressway, a highway, and the speed limit's 55 miles an hour. And we need to be able to make, we want people to identify that they're coming upon that and make a safe maneuver into the parking lot prior to coming right upon it. Two, they're approximately 800 feet from the intersection, and it's, I'll try to show you this with, this is an image from the intersection of Highway 4 and Northwest Expressway. And it's the building to the east of the SPUD, the subject property, is this building here. And if you have an 8-foot monument sign behind the front building limit line, behind the building of the front line of the building, it's going to be very hard to identify that signage. I've already mentioned, I think it's a classier sign than what you have at your intersection of McDonald's. They have a pole sign there, and they're definitely asking for lesser than what C3 allows, what they would typically go into a C3, which is your 50-foot sign. As I've stated, they have the property under contract, can't close without their signage. and that the only reason for the SPUD is to modify the signage. We have specific language in the SPUD that refers to this sign. I do have a couple of other exhibits that would give you a perspective of the sign with respect to the building. So I've kind of showed the sign in respect to the building. It doesn't overwhelm, stick up way above the building or anything. So here's looking back from the intersection of Highway 4, but it's not quite back to that intersection, but it's looking from that direction, and you can see that the sign does not look out of place with the building. This is, and I've showed you, I think I just showed you this perspective, but this is looking from the other direction back towards Highway 4 and give you perspective of what the sign would be with respect to the existing building. So we're asking for your approval today. We agreed to TEs 1 and 3, and we had asked that 2 be stricken, obviously because the only reason we're doing this SPUD is for the sign. Be happy to answer any questions.
I did want to disclose very quickly that Mr. Grubbs and I are currently working on a project that's in construction. So. Not this project.
Not close to this project.
I spoke to Mark about the sign, and I looked at it, and obviously it's not small. I do think that an 8-foot monument sign on Northwest Expressway is probably not commercial, for lack of a better way to put it. It's realistically pretty small for that run. Northwest Expressway there, as I recall, there is a rise in that road right there going back east from Piedmont. Is that right, Mark, or am I thinking of a different section of the road? I think
Rise going back to the east?
Yeah. So I'm not crazy about it. I guess I could, I don't know if we could reduce it any, make it smaller in size. I think 8's unrealistic. Maybe there's a median between that and 30, but looking at the sign in respect to what's there on the corner and the 50 other signs, it's not out of place in the area necessarily, as one would have thought 3 years ago.
Here's my concern about this. First of all, there hasn't really been any huge change in conditions since the property was rezoned. The signage that's allowed under the PUD was approved in 2012. There isn't any real sign competition in the area, and we spoke at some length at the time that the property was rezoned about that fact and about the fact that we didn't want to start sign competition in the area. It was negotiated and agreed relatively recently. This is not really the point or purpose of PUDs and SPUDs. It's a very one little thing they don't agree with. The Brahms folks were very involved in the development of the sign code. And this is going to be something that they're going to want to do at every store they own. They have a sign package now that they're focused on, and I just think that this is a bad thing to get started.
I don't disagree that they may want to do it, but I can't predict that for every use that they're going to come in with. I mean, I can't say. Sure, I get the feeling that there's going to be a sign, and this is their new model sign. It's not hard for me to see that. I do think, though, that this PUD, while it may have come in 2012, that it was the developers who developed this are not now the businesses that are going in there. So I don't think that this is the only application that we're going to see with additional demands for signage. I mean, I just don't. And I still don't know that a 8-foot monument sign is appropriate on Northwest Expressway. I just don't see it being, if I'm a business owner, I can't do that. If I'm in this business especially, I can't, there's no way. I think that, frankly, maybe there's this, like I said, maybe there's a number that's somewhere in the middle, but I just don't think that an 8-foot monument makes it for a retail business on a 55-mile-an-hour road.
Commissioner Mike,
Yeah.
let me ask you a question. In this particular area, in terms of sign competition, just looking at this aerial that we have provided in our packets, how much real competition is there right now?
Well, the biggest
Or is that a
competition
bit-
comes
or is that
down
a
here on the
projection
corner.
for the future?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think the biggest competition comes from down here on the corner at the McDonald's / gas station,
That's right.
whatever it is. I don't think there's anything that's taken the commercial. It doesn't, the bank doesn't appear to have a lot of signage, and they probably won't. And I don't know what's on the other side of Colony Point. I just don't remember, Mark. What's on the other side of Colony Point East?
I don't know what's
And they're like
the
a-
Colony Point, but the Colony Point
there's
sign
a-
is in excess of 8 feet.
Oh, interesting. Didn't know that. So that's the biggest, I think, competition right there. And I can't predict what's going to happen on the south side of Northwest Expressway, what I would refer to as the south side of Northwest Expressway. I don't know what's going to happen there. I can tell you that my expectation for this area is significant residential and retail growth. I mean, we've got Colony Point coming in. There's another big addition that's coming in, I believe, even further to the north up Piedmont Road. And I know there's another large addition. Village Verde is back to the east, isn't it? Yeah, it's back to the east. So, I don't know. I just don't. I get your point, Janice. I'm not crazy about signs either. But I just don't know that, I don't think we get past, I can't agree to, I can't think that an 8-foot sign is logical for these guys. Maybe for a dentist's office, maybe for, an office use, but like I said, if there's a compromise, I'm certainly happy to look at it, but
I don't follow that logic there. I mean, everybody who lives within, 5 square miles of this area is going to know there's a Brahms right there. They probably have less need of a sign for a Brahms than they would for the dentist's office.
Well, we don't have to agree on this. We just have to decide what we're going to do.
That's exactly right.
And I travel from Mustang to here to go play in Piedmont, and if I'm sitting at that intersection, I would want to know that there's a Brahms. There's the other choice, the McDonald's sitting right in front of me that has a 50-foot pole sign that I can see at the intersection. So,
Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, if I may, I agree with Commissioner Hensley. We're talking about Northwest Expressway, and the only hesitation I have is you're saying in 2012 we set something in place that would limit it. Well, I wasn't part of this in 2012. I'd be fine with us revisiting what was done in 2012 to say that on Northwest Highway this sign wouldn't be appropriate. But instead, today, I'm prepared to say that on Northwest Highway, a sign bigger than 8 foot is necessary for a commercial business. For you to say everybody will know it's there, that's what the business, they're in the business of making sure people know they're there, not just making assumptions. So I'm in favor of sign larger than
Like
8
I said,
foot.
you guys haven't said anything, though, Mark. I would prefer that it not be 30. I mean,
If I can
you
jump
got to
in.
give me some, look, I think there's some conversation to be had about.
25?
If I can jump in as well.
That's
I mean,
what
I hate doing this, but I think it needs to be brought down versus 30. Because I don't disagree with Janice's point, is there's not a lot of competition out there. I think 8 is too much of a reach the wrong way, but I think 30 is a little bit on the high side.
I just got word from them that they'll agree to, 25 would be.
Commissioner Highsmith?
Can I see the graphic again of the sign?
Sure.
So about 10 feet off the top is the ice cream cone, right? Is that...
The ice cream cone is essentially 13'6".
In the past, whenever we've worked with signage, typically it's about letter height for legibility at a distance, for car speeds. So I don't think if the lettering is the proper height for the distance, that you wouldn't recognize. I mean, if that lettering height right there works from the corner, then you can see it. Now, if it's just about the ice cream cone and the ability to read the additional, I'm guessing, temporary, signage at the bottom that could be switched out or whatever's going on there, then, I see this as reaching for a little bit of extra than just saying, here's Brahms. So it's hard for me to look at that and say that that's necessary. Just because there's competition currently in place with higher signs, at some point, as a community, if we decided to do a public process in our comp plan and in our previous efforts to determine a size, to then go back and kind of change our mind, I guess that's where my hesitation is.
Is there anybody else here today that wants to be heard on this topic? I don't know if you signed up. No. Commissioners?
Okay. 25? Where's the gap come from? The base and the cone?
It would
Or is
come
it
out of the base.
So,
How tall is the base?
10 feet. Is that right? Am I reading 10?
What about 20? You got a 13-foot ice cream cone there.
I would prefer 20, but I don't want to spend all day on a sign.
He said he'll agree to 20 foot.
So,
You ready for a motion?
move item 9, approval of item 9, amending TE number
2.
2 to allow for a 20 feet high sign. And what's your surface area? What's your square feet surface area?
Well, we'd be taking, we're essentially taking 10 foot off the bottom of it, and it's 14, so we're taking,
Approximately.
I don't know. We can amend that through staff by taking the 10 feet off the bottom.
And then a commensurate amendment to the square footage of the sign.
Second.
Have a motion and a second
Yeah.
to approve SPUD 981 with an amendment to TE number 2 to permit the sign height to be 20 feet and an adjustment to the square footage that's commensurate with that. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It is approved.
Item number 10, SP 494, the special permit to operate a moderate impact institutional use in the C3 zoning district.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is an application to allow the Emerson South Middle School and High School to operate in the Walnut Square Shopping Center. This shopping center is Zone C3, and because it's a middle school/high school, it's considered moderate impact institutional. Because of that, a special permit is required. This exact location was where the Wright Career College was previously located, so it's been an educational type facility for quite some time. We believe that coupled with the historic use of the entire shopping center, lends itself to mean that this use will not have a negative impact on the shopping center or surrounding properties. We would ask for your approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners? No one has signed up to speak on this matter. Is there anybody present who wishes to be heard? No?
I move approval of the application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve SP 494. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 11 is case C-6902, the preliminary plat of Twin Oaks Canyon Phase 2.
Good afternoon, Jason Spencer with Craft and Toll here on behalf of the applicant. So before you today is the preliminary plat of Twin Oaks Canyon Phase 2. It's located on the south side of Wilshire. It's east of Morgan Road. It's basically a continuation of Twin Oaks Canyon Phase 1, which is the addition to directly to the north. This preliminary plat proposes 188 single-family lots on 48 acres. There was a preliminary plat for this area that was previously approved in 2005. It has since expired, and so that's why we're here with the new preliminary plat. It meets the R1 zoning requirement and is in conformance with subdivision regs. We agree with the TEs, and staff has recommended approval. Would ask for your approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
I'll move approval.
Second.
I do have one comment prior, if that's okay. I'm interested in seeing a connection to the south, to the possible future development there.
Connection to the south, and that is a TE, and we're in agreement with that. We'll likely connect probably that southeast corner with the street stub to the south.
Right, okay.
Anything else? I have a motion and a second to approve C-6902. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 12 is case SPUD 984 to rezone 2732 Northwest 20th from R2 to SPUD 984.
Hi. Would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Fallon Brooks, and I live at 2732 Northwest 20th. Sorry. We are rezoning to build a garage with an apartment above it. And I don't know if you have the packet with you, but there was some concern that it was for 3 dwelling units on the property. It's actually for 2. The studio in the back is just an art studio. And also we spoke with city sewer department, and it's, although the packet says 20 feet, they've agreed to 15. Is that right? Okay. So.
Okay. Commissioners?
I think this is kind of neat.
Thank you.
Has anybody signed up?
There's not anybody signed up to speak.
I'll move approval. There's no additional
Second
comment.
motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve SPUD 984 with the adjustment of the...
15 feet from the sewer line.
Right.
Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 13 is SPUD 986 to rezone 620 through 720 Northwest 43rd Street from R1 to SPUD 986.
Hey, Paul?
Good afternoon, Paul Lefevre, 522 Colcord, for the applicant. Property in question is a parking lot and a small adjacent building that is used for office purposes next door. It is owned by the church, Westminster Presbyterian Church. There are a number of reasons behind this transaction, but the church and Westminster School have reached an agreement to sell the parking area and the little structure to the school. There's a number of reasons, but it frees up capital funds for the church, and they get an easement to park on the lot as they always have, and this provides required parking long-term for the school, so I think it'll work out successfully for both. We have Joanne McFarland from the church here. I think, and we also have Bob Vernon and Ruth Ann Riggins from the school to answer any questions if we need them. Now, we're trying to limit uses here from the standpoint of neighbors. They shouldn't observe anything significantly different here, if anything at all. The Ward 2 Commissioner has expressed a number of concerns, of which we've tried to address, and that's the handout that we've given you. The first one was to tighten up the use of the little structure to the east for child care. What is really intended here is, for the church purposes, is to utilize it services during the church activities. The school has the need of like a language lab, a reading lab, math tutoring, what have you, and we're trying to tighten that up so that it's just for those types of uses and not to operate a more traditional child care center. Now, I did make a mistake there. We should add preschool, elementary, and middle school because those are the programs that the school now offers. In Section 7, there's the ability to remove some trees along the east side of the property. We've agreed to, if a fence is replaced there, which it eventually will need to be, only those trees that must be removed to allow a new fence to be erected will be. Section 9 on signs, the school has agreed to eliminate the monument sign request and simply have an attached sign, as you see in an Exhibit G. We've also reduced that size considerably. They're just wanting an identification on that. And then in Section 10, we want to make sure that everyone understands that the 4 access points are the existing 4 access points, and those won't change. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
So,
These are all the items that we discussed, and they are resolved to my satisfaction. So, I would say, Mr. Lefevre, I spoke with staff just before the meeting about whether you even really need this additional use unit of child care center. And from my discussion with you about the use you were planning to make of the property and specific language in the code that exempts public or private schools which offer before or after school activities as part of education or recreational, uses, that it does not apply. So if it's possible between now and City Council for you to remove the use unit, I'd be thrilled. But I'll let you work that out as you move along here.
Then with that assurance, I'm happy to remove that if it's not needed.
There you go. Commissioner?
Excuse me, Chairman. Do we add this as TEs or just an amendment to the application?
We could add them as TEs, or we can just see that the application reflects these amendments between now and council.
That's what I would propose is to just correct the language, and I'll provide staff and Ms. Powers with copies of those in a red line.
So, is there anybody here who wants to be heard on this matter today? It's not even signed up. Commissioners?
I move approval with the appropriate changes.
Second. And deleting the use unit, the child care center use unit that we talked about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second to approve SPUD 986 with the changes discussed. You'll cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 14 is SPUD 987 to rezone 4402 and 4404 South Magnolia Avenue from R1 and C1 to SPUD 987.
Hello, my name is Min Pham. I'm the owner of this land, and this is my first time doing this. But I'm looking to rezone this property to, we have a construction company, and we just need to store material and trucks there and trailers. So I'm just planning on putting a small building, just a metal building up there, and it's not going to be any high traffic or anything like that. It's just basically just to store material like concrete and stuff like that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't have anybody signed up to speak. Commissioners?
Yes, Ruben, I have a question for you. Do you anticipate how many cars are you storing outdoors, just roughly an idea of what that would look like?
If I had to guess, it'd probably be about 3 or 4 trucks and about 3 or 4 trailers to haul the bobcats and whatnot.
On this particular property, there's some existing trees. What is your plan in terms of preservation for those trees?
If I need to preserve them, I will, but if I don't have to, then I will try to chop them down.
I would like to see you preserve as many as you possibly could for that.
There's enough.
The only thing I would add to that, with this being connected or really having adjacent to the property R1, is your buffer and making sure that is an 8-foot fence rather than a 6-foot fence.
Yes, I plan on doing an 8-foot metal fence.
It's going to be, though, opaque, right?
Excuse me?
In other words, it's site-proof.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for that, Mike.
That's what the TE says. I just want to make sure he understands what it is. You got a motion?
Commissioners, I move for adoption of the application with the condition that it's an 8-foot site-proof fencing.
Can I ask staff, do we have some language that we have readily available with respect to preservation of trees that we can add as a TE here in a case where the applicant seems willing and that's what we're wanting, and can we do that?
We'll work with him between now and council and see if we can identify areas where trees can be preserved, and we can put those on the site plan.
Great.
And I think, to be clear, it's an 8-foot fence, as the applicant stated that he's building, not a 6.
Yes, it'd be 8-foot metal fence.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve SPUD 987 with the addition of a TE to require an 8-foot fence specifically,
right,
and the idea that we're going to move forward with preservation of trees between now and council. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It is approved.
Thank you.
Item number 15 is C-6879, the preliminary plat of Chisholm Village, Section 4.
How you doing? Ross Morris, Morris Engineering, representing the applicant. This is the final phase of this project that was started, actually it was started in 2003. This was the 4th phase. We had preliminary platted originally, and actually we had done the final plat on this in 05, and it just sat there. We haven't done anything. And now my client wants to try to move this forward and get it finished up. Of course, the preliminary plat had expired, so we've got to get it. And then everything 1, 2, and 3 have already been done, so the preliminary plat just includes Section 4. And we'll be coming back with a final plat subsequent to this with the construction plans, et cetera. We had come in here a month or 2 ago trying to amend the PUD or redo the PUD, which that didn't fly. So we're in compliance with the original preliminary plat and just going to go back with it and try to finish this project out. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
There is some confusion in the staff report, and maybe it's just with the drawings. With respect to the connection with Lee, it seems to be sort of not quite straight. I assume that'll be dealt with and worked out. But
Yeah, and I don't know where because when we laid it out, we use the final plat off of there, so we're going to go back and check that and make sure when the final plat comes in, it'll have it lined up with Lee. And
I wanted to talk to you also about the connection of Dewey.
Dewey?
I don't see any reason why it should not be connected.
Well, we didn't originally have that connected. We had the connection onto Walker and then to Lee, but I don't think we've ever had a Dewey connected. And I think everything was set up so that since we had the one connection at Lee, and then obviously to Walker, which is a straight through north-south street, that was just not necessary.
Well, but there is a stub to the south there.
There is a stub.
And,
And I don't know if they're here, but the neighbors at the time, I think you were at the time, I don't think the neighbors to the south they didn't want either connection. And I think you told them, look, you're going to have to at least have a connection. And so we connected Lee, and I don't think anybody wanted Dewey connected.
I do.
You do?
I think it should be.
Well, I would, the only thing I've got a concern about that is that now we're going to have Dewey, kind of just this long, straight road from Dewey down to the west and runs all the way almost back to 122nd Street. And I'm sympathetic to somewhat concerns that we've had from other neighborhoods about these long, straight streets that we didn't do one. There was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting where the lady came in and said, look, you did this long, straight connection there. And so that's my only concern as I kind of look from bottom to top or top to bottom. That thing is, now that's a long, straight street.
But there's a connection right there at, God, I can't see this without my glasses, whatever street this is, 119th Street. So there's access out onto Walker right there, and then,
Yep.
it's not like it's a long, straight strip where there's no exit.
No, I just don't know. That's just my only concern about that is there is an exit out to Walker, but this could also be a way to avoid signalization there for these people all down here in the Chisholm Creek blocks 9 through 14 and go all the way up to 122nd.
So if we connected Dewey, could we delete the connection to Walker? That was my client's biggest complaint to start with. He didn't want to connect to Walker.
Where does Walker connect, Ross?
At 119th.
Right, 119th, it makes a little jog and then connects out to Walker on the east side there. Because then there would be a connection right there in that neighborhood to the south. Just basically one lot.
What's the reasoning behind not wanting to connect to Walker?
Traffic. He felt like that traffic on Walker would come back through the neighborhood, which, anyway, that's what his feelings were. So we tried to delete that connection, which it was required, as you can imagine. But we just had the one connection at Lee, and we've never had any connection showing at Dewey, although there is a sub-street there.
I'd like to see all three connections. I think, I think the more connectivity you have, the better dispersed the traffic becomes. So, right now it looks like you're focusing all of your traffic off Northwest 122nd, straight down Chisholm Village Drive. Is that correct?
Do what now? It is talking about coming down Walker?
Looks like all the traffic into this neighborhood.
Yeah, Chisholm Village Drive is a large collector street right there that comes back into the, feeds back into this neighborhood. So, and like I said, we originally were required to make the connection at Lee and to Walker, and so that's what we've got reflected. I just remember back in the early part of this, which I think Ms. Powers was there, we had meetings out there on site. The people to the south didn't want any connections. I mean, they didn't want those people coming into their neighborhood. And so we resolved it to just have the Lee connection.
I'd be interested to hear from staff, just in terms of the trade-off between, having access to Walker from that neighborhood or the Dewey. I think we've got Lee worked out. The question is whether or not on Dewey do we want it to connect to the next neighborhood and then give up, the possibility of, the Walker exit. Just what does that look like?
The connection to Dewey seems to make more sense because there's a stub street there that was intended to connect, and you have a connection to Walker just right there south at 118th Street. The problem is that the existing PUD that's in place requires the connection to Walker.
But doesn't it only say that we only have to connect to Lee too in the PUD, not to Dewey and Lee?
PUD requires connection to Walker and Lee, so you really can't make a trade unless we amend the PUD.
Right. Or connect to Dewey unless we amend the PUD, because I think the PUD says specifically we're connecting to Lee and to Walker. So to, I guess, add Dewey would be an amendment, or to delete Walker would be an amendment, which that's what we had come back through, was to delete the Walker. And this body decided, no, that was important, we needed to keep that. And so that amendment, it went away, and we just came back with what was originally planned.
I'd still like to see all three. My main issue there is just, we've got a stub already in place in South neighborhood. What's the quality of that, the future of that area? I know it's, in between two properties. It's not a massive thing, but the connectivity and the quality, the continued quality there, I think, is what my concerns are.
Well, I think what we felt like was that because they're so close together, it just didn't, necessity-wise, and because the people to the south didn't want it, that, okay, they would accept one, but not two of them just a few hundred feet apart.
Commissioners?
Well, with the connection to Lee already satisfied, I would move for approval of the application, leaving the Walker exit and not stubbing all the way through to Dewey. Is really my idea. If we do Dewey, then we got to get rid of the stub out of the exit to Walker. So I would just approve it.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve C-6879 as is. Connections to Lee and Walker. Would you cast your votes, please?
Ross, you agree with all the other TEs, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted
Yeah.
I thought I heard that.
Thank you.
Item 16 was continued. Item 17 is SPUD 985 to rezone 7501 South Shields Boulevard from SPUD 543 to SPUD 985.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is a case that has weaved its way through Board of Adjustment and now finds itself here at the Planning Commission, and it's worth a bit of a look back at the history of the site before I go forward with why we're here today. The site was originally, back in 2007, zoned I-2, except there was a sliver of R1. In fact, you can still see on the map, you see some of the dead R1 that is there. This has been a car lot for quite some time. I believe my client purchased this tract from Huderberg. My client is Discount Tires. When they bought this in 2007 or 8, because there was a sliver of R1, it needed to be rezoned to enable them to put their Discount Tire operation on the site. But an I-2 site would allow a 50-foot sign. It probably won't surprise you to learn the only reason my client wanted this site at I-240 in Shields is because of the exposure to I-240. So the ability to have a pole sign consistent with everything else up and down I-240 was paramount in their decision to acquire this site. They were not represented at the time, and they were given some advice that they needed to do a spud rather than do a straight I-2 on the sliver of R1 that remained. So when they did that spud, one of the boilerplate technical evaluations that you see in every case requested an 8-foot monument sign. My client appeared on his own behalf and was asked the question by the chairperson, do you agree with the staff report? Having never appeared in Oklahoma City before, all he saw was recommendation for approval and said, yes, I agree with the staff report. Well, what he didn't understand was when he said, yes, I agree with the staff report, he was agreeing to an 8-foot sign, which he would never have done had he known what he was agreeing to. So as soon as it was approved, my client then applied for a building permit and installed the sign. The sign has existed since 2008 or 9 at 50 feet. ODOT, as everyone knows, is reconfiguring a portion of 240, and part of that required some acquisition of additional right-of-way. The right-of-way that was required was right where the sign was, so they condemned that piece, took the location where the sign was, so we've lost that ability. We went and filed a building permit to erect the exact same sign that we essentially are just moving a few feet, and we're told, well, your permit's denied, you're limited to 8 feet. Of course, my client was confused because how could that be? We've had a 50-foot sign for the last 7-9 years. And we went to the Board of Adjustment. At the Board of Adjustment, we were seeking a variance to the PUD to allow the 50-foot sign. It was at the direction of the then chair of the Board of Adjustment, Ms. Powers, now chair of the Planning Commission, that perhaps this is better suited as a zoning case. So here we are now with a zoning case to permit a sign that my client has enjoyed for quite some time. It's just a means to get us back in the same position that we were before the ODOT taking. My client, since it's been removed over the last year, has seen a reduction in customers of about 8 to 10 on a daily basis. If you are familiar with the area, as I know some of you are, it gets lost among all the other signs. And so without the ability to have exposure onto the 240 service road and the 240 highway, the site doesn't have a lot of viability for the use that my client seeks. So what we've done in this SPUD is we've taken all of the things that were in the SPUD before in terms of uses and building materials and setbacks and parking requirements, baked them right into this, except for the signage. We're trying to clarify that, no, we do not agree to an 8-foot sign. We would like the 50-foot sign that we have enjoyed for quite some time. So I'm here to say that I do agree with the staff report, except for technical evaluation number 2, which asked to limit the signs to 8 feet in height. Be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, there's not a lot to talk about here except the sign. It's really the only point and purpose of the SPUD, and that in and of itself is a problem for me, as I've already expressed to you. I don't think that's the point of SPUDs, is to change signage regulations. But this is a case where there's zoning in place. It provides for an 8-foot sign, 100 square feet monument sign. If we want to talk about why that's appropriate or not appropriate at this corner, I think that's really where the discussion needs to focus. The rest of it's kind of a wash as far as I'm concerned about who did what and why and who should have been represented and wasn't and that kind of thing. So.
And the only reason I mentioned that is because I think there is an equitable issue here with, had ODOT not condemned my client's property, I wouldn't be here. The sign that they've had for almost a decade would still be there. So I think it's an important component of why I'm standing here today.
Well, but, let's not get into that, because it sounds to me like the sign they had was not even the sign that they were permitted to have. It was 50 feet tall. that wasn't what the permit allowed, so, you know. And if it had been the city coming and saying, you've got to take this sign down, that'd be one thing, but, you know, it was condemned and property was paid for, and so here's where we are. They want a sign that's bigger than the one that's allowed by the zoning that they have, so.
How large is that sign if Hudeberg's to the west? You know about how?
I believe it's 50 feet as well, because they've got the C3 zoning, which allows 50 feet where you abut a freeway.
Okay. And the sign that was there was 50 feet?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was taken down because of ODOT? It was in an easement or something?
Well, it was in where it became an easement. It was our land, but ODOT needed it for their project, so ODOT acquired the land that the sign was in, yes.
So it's almost a grandfather other than the sign being down?
Right. We just have to move what we had slightly to the east and south.
I don't have a problem with it myself, and you know, I think it's appropriate. According to the signage that's along 240, I really don't have a problem.
Madam Chairwoman,
It ensures on overpass and
Yes, sir.
The I-240 goes under, right?
That is correct.
Which is a little bit different than driving down the highway on a flat surface. I mean, you got these two, this corridor is, I think, a challenge.
It is, because, you know, to your point, as you're coming from the east, you've got a significant visual blockage with the Shields overpass.
Madam Chairwoman, I appreciate it. Maybe it doesn't need to be said, but support the commissioner from the ward where this exists, and not to give the impression as a new commissioner, I'm all in favor of big signs always, but this is an interstate. The history was helpful for me, how you've had this sign, you just want to keep the same sign. It seems to me like it is appropriate to have a large sign on the interstate, especially given the history of why you're even having to ask for permission.
I'll make a motion to approve, and then it'll eliminate in TE2, okay?
Second motion. Amended.
I have a motion and a second to approve SPUD 985 with an amendment to TE2. You'll cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 18 is ABC 888 for an ABC2 overlay of the C3 district located at 3428 Northwest 23rd Street.
Is the applicant present? Would you come forward, please? Give us your name and address for the record.
Emma Russell, and what's the, he knows the address.
3428 Northeast 23rd. Miss Kitty's Bar and Grill.
And this is our first time, so we don't know what.
Just tell us what it is you're asking for.
Liquor license.
By the drink, liquor by the drink. We already have beer license, and we already been approved to sell food and everything. Now we want to add liquor by the drink.
Okay, so what you're seeking is zoning, not a license, but okay.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of people who are signed up to speak. If you'll have a seat for me, please. Is it Bishop Malcolm Kobe? If you'd come forward, please, and give me your name and address for the record.
Malcolm Kobe. My home address is 5512 Straight Drive, Oklahoma City, 73121.
And what do you want to tell us about this,
May I read a prepared statement I have for this, please?
if you'd like?
It's very brief. We're submitting this objection to the application of Ms. Russell for a license with ABC to alcoholic beverage consumption within a restaurant. This objection is submitted with utmost concern of two factors. First, it's obvious that the city fathers are serious about reviving and enhancing the quality of life in the northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City. It's also a well-known fact that this particular segment of the city, Northeast 23rd Street, is a corridor containing multiple houses of worship of various faiths. Our facility under construction at 3600 Northeast 23rd Street, located in the adjacent block east east of the applicant's proposal. Our churches are more than places of hold worship services. We're extensions of the hand of our Creator to empower our fellow citizens in a holistic manner, mind, body, and soul. Our ministries include mentoring youth, educational development, feeding programs for the less fortunate, financial literacy, prisoner reentry services, etc. We submit that such a proposed facility will not add any value to the potential economic, social, and familial stability of Oklahoma City. Secondly, we view that this application to be adverse to the spirit of healthy community environment. The publication that's popular in our city, Just Busted, records the multiple cases of public drunkenness in our city. It's a sad commentary on the image of Oklahoma City to follow these statistics of the effects of alcoholism and other forms of mind and behavioral altering substances. Contributing to this dilemma is the reduction of alcohol substance abuse treatment programs in our city. This leaves families vulnerable to domestic violence, deaths due to driving under the influence, and a myriad of other crimes associated with the disease initiated by choice and availability. Alcohol, therefore, becomes a weapon of destruction, in our opinion. So why promote the destructive element for the sake of financial prosperity? We only request that this application be denied. We pray that Ms. Russell will consider a wonderful family restaurant that is so much needed in our community in the place of it.
Thank you.
I represent Victory Temple Church of God in Christ, our pastor and the parishioners there and their families. This is Deacon Broom, one of my deacons at the facility, at the church.
Thank you. Did
Thank
you want to be heard, sir?
Do you want to say anything?
Just like to say, just don't know what he just said, we are.
Would you give me your name and address for the record, please?
Beg pardon?
Give me your name and address for the record.
Oh, Deacon Calvin Broom. I'm the chairman of our trustee board of our church, the Victory Temple Church of God in Christ. Yeah. And just like to reiterate what he just read off, by having alcoholic beverages sold at a place so close to our facility. So we request that you deny this application. Thank you.
How far is your church away from Miss Kitty's?
It's the very next block. I don't know how many feet it is. It's the facility on the map there to the right of the subject area. The facility right there in the middle.
Right. That's y'all?
That's, yes.
And then between you and Miss Kitty's, what are those three structures there? Can you tell me that?
There's a house and one or two houses, I believe.
I think there's two houses in between that building and our property.
Is there any other retail out in this area? Retail businesses, restaurants, anything like that?
To the west, there's the barber shop or some of the little very short strip malls to the west of their facility. Otherwise, there's service organizations, auto repair, and some other things.
Now, is Miss Kitty's, are you open now? Yes. And you're open as a beer, Low Point Beer and beer and wine and just beer and food. Okay. Any problems with Miss Kitty's so far?
Oh.
Y'all getting along good?
Haven't had pleasure meeting her. No,
but I mean, as the church and their operation thus far?
No, at this point.
All right, thank you for that.
Commissioners?
I have a couple of questions. Right now, what are your hours of operation?
We work 10 to 11, lunchtime, 10 to 2 for lunch, and then 10 to 2 afternoon, then 6 to 2 in the evenings.
Okay, and the size of your operation?
Size?
Yeah, seating?
50 people. 50 people.
Okay. Okay. I've looked at this and looked at the staff report, have some serious concerns about a couple of things. One is this is designed to be Northeast Renaissance TIF district that will benefit from that TIF, I think it's number 9, which is really redevelopment that's happening in Northeast Oklahoma City. And then just looking at the staff report, it gives me some concern, and I just don't see the need to increase their footprint, particularly on Northeast 23rd. And for that reason, I would recommend denial to this commission. So I move to deny.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Oh, wait, excuse me. Now, you want to deny it? Now, years ago, it was a bar and grill, and it sold liquor by the drink or however. And we went through all the motions to get approved for this, and went almost like door to door, and I didn't realize that church was that close. They said 300 feet, and we went through all of that. Now, I want to know why you exactly saying you deny it, against it. Is it because it's close to the church, or is it just not needed in that neighborhood? Or, what's the real reason?
I can't say that it's not needed. You're currently in operation.
Right.
And I think you are in that operation has been approved. I don't see any need to expand that operation approval at this point.
See, I disagree because liquor by the drink.
Ma'am, this is not a debate. I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second to deny ABC 888. Would you cast your votes, please? It is denied.
Item number 19 is PUD 1648 to rezone 11020 West Memorial Road from PUD 1464 to PUD 1648.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Dr. James White, the superintendent for Piedmont Schools, Sean Willis, and Darren Burns. This is a tract that you might remember. An individual had come forward several years ago with an R1 application. He eventually went back and came back with a PUD that's R1. And what we're here for today is a PUD that would allow the Piedmont school system to operate a kindergarten and pre-kindergarten facility. We do have a couple TEs in the staff report that I'd like to address. 1 and 3 we're fine with. Number 2 is a specific plan shall be required. I'd like to delete that, and I'll tell you why. If we think about why a specific plan is required, it's because somebody might be coming through the Planning Commission looking for their entitlements, but not ready to spend the money on construction drawings or architectural drawings because of the expense that might create without the entitlements necessary to build what they want to build. What we're coming with you today are full-blown construction drawings, full-blown site plan, and we're ready to go. So the purpose of why we have a specific plan isn't here. We can answer any question that any staff member might have or any planning commissioner might have. But some of the things about the site plan that will allow this to be a quality development, when you look at Memorial Road, we have 3 access points. The first one right here is a long loop road. And the reason we have that is where the parents would drop the kids off. So we have more than adequate space for queuing once you get into the site, because the drop-off for the students from the kids would be here on the south side of the building. The bus drop-off would be the middle access point right here off Memorial, so the bus could come in, drop off, and then get back onto Memorial. You'll notice that all of the drives are 2-way everywhere you see. Some are 3-way. So there's adequate space for queuing. One of the questions I have heard is, why is there no vehicular connection to this site? And predominantly the reason is because of safety. Unfortunately, we live in a time and place where bad things happen, and a lot of times bad things happen to children at schools. And so the ability to control points of access into a development is paramount for children, for school systems, for superintendents, for everybody interested in the safety of the kids that go to this school. Now, what we will have is the adequate pedestrian access to the neighborhood developed to the west and to the south. You'll notice our playground area here in the southwest corner of the development. There's agreement in place with the developer of the single-family subdivision that his residents will be able to enjoy this as well. So it will be a mutually beneficial playground area for both the school and also the residences. So we will have pedestrian connections, and we will have sidewalks along Memorial, but one thing we cannot agree to is multiple points of vehicular access into this site. As I said, unfortunately, we live in a day and time that, frankly, is fairly scary. And when you've got little children, I think it's important that the school has the policies in place to control the points of access, to control where students are dropped off, to ensure their safety. When we just look at it from a use perspective, I don't see any big impediment. Piedmont Schools is a wonderful district, and this will be a wonderful facility in this location that will likely help spur some of the development in the surrounding PUD 1464. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I would like to note, as you read through the staff report, and staff has done their analysis of the various policies, beginning on page 8, multiple of these state that no conditions exist that would require mitigation. If we go to traffic on page 10, the proposed use is consistent with the street typology. So I think what we have is an application that is compatible with the area, certainly compatible with the comprehensive plan, and we'd ask for your approval.
How, in regards to security, how are those points of access secured?
Well, because we can control the flow of traffic just on the arterial. If you start poking in different points of access, you do two things. One, you lose your eyes as to where the cars are coming in, and two, you create points of conflict. If you've got a large queuing lane, now you're going to have people cutting through a neighborhood to try to avoid the queuing lane and try to cut in front of everybody else that's already in the queuing lane. So that's an absolute disaster for traffic. If you think about mothers that might be in a hurry to drop their students off, they're going to burden the surrounding neighborhood to cut in front of all the people that went through the arterial to get in line to drop the kids off.
So a car pulls off the arterial there, Memorial, and what happens? What's the process? Someone in the building sees the car come and goes to the back door to welcome them, potentially? Because isn't that where they pull when they come in? They come down and around.
You've got one here, a parent drop-off, and then the bus drop-off is right here. So it's bigger here because you're going to have, because it's kindergarten and pre-kindergarten, you're likely to have more parents driving than bus traffic. And so that's why our queuing lane is much bigger for that than the bus.
I understand. I guess my question here is, like, even if they come from Memorial, they're going to end up behind the school, right? Sure. And so I'm trying to figure out the security process that like, why a car can't come from the neighborhood directly behind the school. Is it that people watch for the cars that are coming off Memorial and then go to the back to welcome them?
Well, if we think about during the middle of the day when it's not the drop-off time, now we're able to focus our attention just up here. And we likely lock other doors. I mean, if you've been in a school recently, after some of the tragic events that have happened around the country, schools are much more on lockdown. You can't get into a school unless you sign in or go through certain security checkpoints. So if you have access points over here, now you've got vulnerable areas in the back of your building where the administrative office is likely up here.
But those doors would be locked during the day.
I don't know the exact security procedure, but what I'm telling you is, as you start opening more vehicular access points, you're just creating more liability and asking for more cars that need not be wanted to enter the facility. And if there was a concern that we didn't have adequate, queuing space or adequate access from the arterial, then perhaps we'd have to address it. But we have more than adequate space to queue. We have more than adequate access from the arterial. All an access point from the neighborhood vehicular would do is create a security problem, but more importantly, I think, create a serious point of conflict with accidents. As people are trying to, jockey into position to cut in front of everybody. So now they're flying through neighborhood streets to try to beat this line of cars.
But there will be a pedestrian access.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, this is going to be a shared playground area, and we'll have sidewalks, along Memorial. And the neighborhood through the PUD is required to have sidewalks. So there'll be absolute pedestrian connectivity.
I think I might be able to short-circuit this discussion a little bit. I think everybody here is thrilled with the use. Staff is pretty adamant that they want a specific plan and that they want vehicular access. And so if you're not in a position to agree to those things today, I think we need to continue this.
I'd ask, sorry,
And
go ahead.
get one side or the other to decide that we're going to live with it the way it is.
I find it strange, and who's staff? I guess I'd like to know who staff is that's wanting the vehicular connection.
Well, traffic
Okay.
and, long-range planning. I mean, connectivity is our deal. We don't want to encourage people to be out onto the arterial streets. As a mother of children who attend public schools, I get what you're saying about the security, and I also understand far too well how carpool lines work and, the cutting in and all of that kind of stuff. That makes sense to me. But we need to resolve this so that we can all be on the same page. Great use. We love it. Let's get it figured out.
So my follow-up is, what would a specific plan do?
I also understand that staff hasn't really had an opportunity to review all of the materials that have been submitted, that you're thinking, take the place of a specific plan. So I think a little bit more time might help resolve some of these issues.
We filed this application quite some time ago, and so I'm not sure what more materials might be needed from staff, and if the pedestrian connection was a critical element, it should have shown up as a technical evaluation.
Pedestrian's not the
I mean the vehicular. And so if we think about what we're trying to do with neighborhoods, we don't like cut-through traffic, right? And all you're doing is encouraging cut-through traffic through the neighborhood to beat the line.
We might get Development Services to let us know on the materials that were submitted recently, if those qualify them for waiving the specific plan requirement according to the ordinance.
They're construction drawings. So if full-blown construction drawings wouldn't qualify, I'm not sure what would. I mean, typically, it doesn't even take construction drawings to qualify, to waive.
Yeah, construction drawings would suffice for a specific plan.
Those have already been submitted.
I'm not aware that we had those.
Yes. I mean, building permit might have it. But I mean, we submitted to Development Services too, though. I mean, we've submitted, we emailed everything we have, all three of these, again, detailing every material and the site plan, which was filed with the application.
If they've gone that far, that would suffice for a specific plan.
Well, I'm not adverse to a specific plan. Most of the time, I'm up here on behalf of developers saying we can address that. There's just, everything has been submitted, and we've got a short time fuse. We're happy to address anything that's necessary with staff as we march to City Council, but I'm confident that if we've got building permit ready submittals, they've got everything they need. All we're talking about is the use at this point.
David, didn't you have something to do with the school on Council just north of 44th Street? I think it's a very similar situation. It may be that the school was on may have been a street on what would have been the north side of the school. But the school layout was basically the same thing. You circled for drop-off, you dropped off at the back of the school, and so on and so forth, which has worked really well, and that's an industrial area where that school is.
I'm not sure if I was involved in that or not.
Yeah.
I've asked traffic to come out and speak to us, so maybe we can get this resolved.
While we're waiting, it is helpful that we have a seating chart for all of our new members and members that have shifted around, so it's kind of nice.
At this point, all we've seen is the site plan that's in your staff report. We have not seen any of these other drawings showing any of the circulation. So
The site plan is what shows the circulation.
If you look at it, what we received in 8.5 by 11, you're showing drop-off on the east and west sides of the building. I mean, we can't make out what you did. We asked to see the circulation plan. That was our comment, to see a specific plan. I have not seen any of these other materials. I'm sorry, but they didn't come to us.
If the issue is staff looking at it, we're going to have about 5 weeks to go to council. This, it's in color now, but this was submitted the date we filed our application about 6 weeks ago. And so I apologize if staff hadn't had a chance and all they had was an 8.5 by 11. Luckily, my office is located right next to 420 West Main. I could have easily walked over a much larger copy if it was necessary, but that request was never made to me.
It was in the staff report that was published Friday.
Out of curiosity, what's the distance, Dennis? Hey, David.
I've been called worse.
Yeah, you probably have. From top to bottom there, from Memorial to what's that length that your road's there? Bring your guys up to have them explain that drawing to us, if you would, please. You guys are going to have to get on the front row of the church. Make this work, okay?
Gentlemen, names and addresses, please.
James White, Superintendent, Piedmont Schools, 713 Piedmont Road North, Piedmont, Oklahoma, 73078.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren Burns, Walsh Engineering, 200 East Matthew Brady.
Thank you.
Sean Willis with the Stacy Group, 10620 Timber Oak Drive, Oklahoma City.
Thank you. Who wants to explain the drawing?
Give us some, if you could move it back just a little bit so we can all see it a little better. Not too far, though. We won't be able to see it at all.
Face it this way a little more. Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go.
All right.
The site that you were asking about, the depth.
What are those distances and those depths?
About 871 by 600.
Okay, so you got an 871 length, your queuing lane is what I'm asking.
Well, the queuing lane, depending on how you...
Right, just give me a rough.
So when you have basically...
Well, they wouldn't drive through the parking lot, so they're...
We potentially could.
If I may, we actually have two different options we can do with this building, and the main reason we want to leave some flexibility for what you all thought. One that David explained does pull them off. We can loop it around. We built 5 years ago in Piedmont a 5th and 6th grade center, almost an identical building to this. It's going to, for our two grades, 5th and 6th, this will be pre-K and K. This is the design we use in that. Bus lane up front, loop all the way around. It is in front of a housing addition. It connects with a sidewalk. It doesn't connect with a drive-through. But we wanted to give the option here, if it helped alleviate traffic because of more traffic, coming with the pre-K and K, of coming from two different directions. We can come this way and load, stack out. We can stack two wide, go to one lane, which is what we do in our intermediate, bring them back out. Because our district, I don't know if you're familiar with our district, but this is located basically in the middle. We have a lot of people that are going to be coming from the west, the city of Piedmont, and we're going to have a lot of traffic that's coming from County Line, which is where a lot of our growth is right now. And so this way they can come from whichever direction, go back out, and never have to cross traffic if we use the two lanes. Or if the council feels it's better, or if we see it's going to do better traffic-wise, we can use the whole thing. Either way, we stack about the same number of cars. It just depends on how they're exiting.
One of the things that we find when we design these schools and we design sites, big viewing audience, sorry. One of the things we do when we design any school site, especially elementary schools, is to separate traffic. So we talked about bringing off-site traffic on separately, but the traffic we do plan on being there are buses and cars. So we always try to separate the school traffic, the school bus traffic from the parent traffic, because we all know that somebody could be on a cell phone or it's sporadic, somebody's doing something in the back seat, and so we try to take any chance of a car and a bus coming in that same entrance, turning in front of each other. And so what the school does is, I think you were asking earlier about the procedure, for morning drop-off and afternoon pickup, they'll set cones out, so the site is a little bit more restricted where they want the cars to go. Sometimes 2 lanes turns, or 1 lane turns to 2 lanes in so they can do that queuing. They'll have staff out there with flags and places for the kids to stand, and that way they know 1 kid out, 1 kid in a car, because you can't have somebody running out between cars, cross traffic, especially in this instance where it's not 6th graders, it's 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and so
And we put them in the cars ourselves.
all of that process takes place with parents who know what they're doing, have been trained, and come there every day. And so it's very difficult to anticipate drive-through traffic and how you handle those people who don't know or may have never been through that site before, and you have 4-year-olds trying to run across and stop them. So,
And Commissioner Heisman, you asked earlier about visitors. That would be the visitor parking. So when they come in, and so we have the front door there, you mentioned security. 3 of our school sites, Stone Ridge Elementary, which is located in Oklahoma City, Northwood Elementary, which is in the city limits of Oklahoma City, both have buzzer and camera systems that no one gets admitted to that until we see their face on the camera. And then the ladies out front or the principal has to buzz them in. And also our current primary school, which houses our pre-K, also has that buzzer system. So no one comes in until we can identify you on that camera.
and the other site thing we do, so the way this plan works is playground. And so we'll be able to block this off with gates during the day. So all these kids can come out, freely play, not have to cross a street. The street right here will be blocked during the day during school hours. So they can come out and play, not have to worry about somebody stopping traffic or somebody driving through. So not only are we not bringing somebody off-site, we're even restricting even more anybody who happens to drive back here. This is staff parking. But anybody who drives through won't drive through that site and have to potentially stop for a child crossing that road. But we do leave access there for fire access, and then in the morning pickup. So those open during drop-off and pickup. Their staff will come, close those gates off, and then operate that during the day.
And we do that at one of our existing schools now, every day.
That way the kids have the entire back part of the property without having to worry about it.
Any other questions? Comments?
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, I'll ask, I've heard there's concerns from the city traffic, which I want to hear from, unless the answer is the city staff does not yet know enough. So either if we know enough what the concerns are, or I want to hear them, or do you not yet have enough information?
Our concern is that when you have a school, every August and September, our phones are ringing off the hook because traffic is backed out into the arterial. We have not had a chance to review this. There were no dimensions on the plan I had. We don't know how big the school is, how many students are going to be there. These are all questions that we're concerned with because we don't want traffic backed up onto Memorial.
And, I mean, I would point you to the traffic comments, I guess, or maybe it's long-range comments, but on traffic on page 10, it says the proposed use is consistent with the street typology. And any information that traffic needs between now and council, we'll have as many meetings as they need. But the use is consistent with the typology of the street, so.
And if I may, on Memorial, where we're talking about one reason we chose this location, it dead ends, it's not a through street in either direction past the 2 side streets, Mustang and Sarah Road, which we are at. And at the current time, I believe there's only, if I'm not mistaken, 2 residences, and the airport's on the end down on Sarah Road, because they came before you a few years ago about that street being permanently closed. We have an elementary right on the other side of Memorial, on the other side of that airport. So that can never be, the way I understand it, that can never be a through street. In the other direction, there's not a road going out the other way on Memorial once you get past Mustang. It dead into the housing, Village Verde, which was mentioned earlier, housing addition.
But we'll give them whatever information they need to make sure they're fine. But I think if we just think about the use and what Memorial is, at least pursuant to the staff report, it's consistent with that.
Well, it seems that for us, the issue is whether we want to waive, for lack of a better word, the requirement for connectivity in favor of this particular plan.
I think that's accurate.
And then, so, to your point, Rusty, I think there's a traffic if you like this plan, I think the details with traffic may be able to be worked out. And traffic seems to assent to that. So I think for us, it's narrowing the issue down is, do we want to waive this particular plan and the requirement for connectivity in favor of this plan? Personally, it seems to make sense to me in this particular case, just for this school. And I'm thinking to other schools that I'm aware of that have similar arrangements that are built in neighborhoods and don't have that connectivity in the back. There's 2 or 3 that are by us that are right in the middle of neighborhoods that have one way in, one way out. And it's certainly not as well designed as this with the width of the drives, because you can go in and out on the same side, on the east and west side. Is that right? I think it's going to give us plenty of flow, but I'm not the traffic guy. That's just my view.
Well, from my own review of this, I guess, my concern about it was back up onto Memorial. It seems to me like you've got a lot of on-site room to work with there. But also because Memorial is not a through street, that kind of reduces my concern about that a little bit.
That's right. I've forgotten that too.
From a mom point of view, somebody who spent way too much time in carpool lines, this looks like a really good plan to me in terms of the internal flow and the movement of cars and in and out. And frankly, I get the thing about people cutting in front of you, I mean, because when you're late and you've got to drop the kids off and there's a place you can, get in there, I would be a little bit concerned about it increasing traffic through the neighborhood if that were an option. Frankly, moms can be ruthless.
I know my wife tends to run late, so when I said cut through the neighborhood, I was envisioning her. So
Could you guys remind us what the enrollment is?
What the what?
What the
Between
enrollment?
450 and 500.
Of this building?
This building. Do we know what the enrollment is at Wilson? Wilson? I only draw the comparison because Wilson is in a neighborhood. How do they queue? Is it an issue for that neighborhood?
Oh, it's a mess. Wilson's, pick up and drop off they do have a little bit of maneuverability on site, and when they did improvements to the playground area and stuff, I think they bought a little tiny bit. I know when they did the renovations to Horace Mann, which is near where I live, they bought a little bit. But in the older schools, when they did the renovations to Nichols Hills Elementary, they bought a little bit. And they're, but they have to typically give up playground to do that, And even so, it's imperfect. It's, you've got cars backed up on the streets.
Well, can staff articulate the benefit of the additional connectivity in a wider sense?
The reason why we have a policy that tries to promote connecting schools to neighborhoods?
Yes.
Ideally, this would be developed in concert with the surrounding subdivision. Since the surrounding subdivision has a preliminary plat that probably will need to be redone because this is taking a piece out of it, ideally what would happen is the site would be permeable from multiple entry and access points and designed in a thoughtful way to not allow people to do the cut through in the line. The way that this is laid out, I understand the concern that could happen. So it's really providing direction to somebody when coming in with a brand new development proposal in a neighborhood to site a school in a location where you can get neighborhoods to be able to walk and people who live in that neighborhood to not have to drive through the neighborhood streets out to the arterial and get in the queuing line.
We want them walking.
And walk to the neighborhood school as well. And so that's where that policy comes up with. I think in this site, in this case, it seemed like a good opportunity because the neighborhood around it has not yet been laid out. The neighborhood streets have not been designed. And what our hope was is that the owner of the subdivision and the school district would work together on a plan that could meld those two concepts together.
And we've been very fortunate, ma'am, to be able to work with this particular developer on this. As far as sharing playgrounds go, and we've made a deal they can use our parking if they have a neighborhood event. Once they establish their homeowners association, we're having FEMA safe rooms in this. They will be able to utilize those after hours from the neighborhood as well. So We have a great relationship with the developer, and I don't see any reason we can't continue to work with that as he lays it out for his addition.
But at the same time, we're saying it's too late, right?
No, we're not saying it's too late.
To have vehicular connectivity.
It's not too late. It's a safety concern. There will be plenty of points of access. The elementary school I went to, it had one point. It was Dennis Elementary. It's surrounded by Warwick 5, Warwick, Blue Stem, another neighborhood I can't remember. There was one.
Summit's over there too.
Yes, and there was one means of access from vehicular traffic, but every one of those neighborhoods had common area that backed up to the school that had sidewalks leading right to the school. That's what we envision here, not vehicles.
Well, my understanding, though, is that the connectivity issue is really the city wants to see both, right? So how do other schools handle the security issue?
I think that they all have individual problems with loading and access and pickup lines and security issues.
And I haven't seen a school, and what they can confirm, new schools do not get built with multiple points of access. These aren't neighborhood schools anymore. New schools aren't built with multiple roads running through their site. It's just not how it's done.
None of our school sites are connected to neighborhoods except for the sidewalk. Sean, if you all didn't
We
design any.
haven't had any district ask us. I appreciate the idea. It always comes back to safety. They want absolute control of what happens on their site. I mean, it goes even to, we do construction, do additions to these sites. You start to have people coming in who are construction workers, and that gets them very nervous about who's there, who's not there. What are they supposed to be here? Are they not supposed to be here? And so you take that to a grander scale. You start to have people driving through. I just know, as an operations point, it's very hard to control and keep the kids safe.
I'm not trying to belabor the point. We've got pedestrian access, that's people. The cars, if it's a safety issue with cars and kids mixing and potentially being hit by a car, I understand that. But the car isn't who might steal a kid or, bring a gun, right? It's the person in the car. So why somebody couldn't park in the neighborhood and walk through the pedestrian connection?
Well, they can't.
The difference in security there is, I guess.
They having kids running in front of a car. Kid jumps over the fence and runs across, chases the ball while a car's driving down the street. That kind of thing. They're not used to watching out for little kids. They're just driving down the street. So it's that kind of thing where you can't necessarily control. If they're trying to control those kids, there's teachers out there watching at recess.
You know what?
That's the kind of act.
I think we know all about this. We need to know. So I'm looking for a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion. I got this. I'll move approval of item 19 with the understatement, on the specific plan, TE2, I think we've got enough information. JJ's confirmed that. With respect to the traffic, you agreed to meet with traffic, go over your plan in detail with them so that they understand that, and that'll get worked out between now and council. Traffic's agreeable with that. And I think that's all I've got. You agree with the other three, David?
The other two.
There's 1, 3.
Yep. With 1 and 3, yes. We agree with those.
Commissioner, your motion is to not require the first condition requiring vehicular connection, right?
Right. That's right.
Well, and that's a legal point I'd like Ms. Randall to actually address, because I've actually yet to come to this podium and address conditions, right? The technical evaluations it's never been brought up. Do we have to condition a motion on the conditions, or are they the technical evaluations?
I think it's the technical evaluations. I think the conditions are something that you have to decide whether or not it's in conformance or not.
I'm glad you asked.
Right. So with respect to condition number 1, we've agreed that we will waive that particular condition for conformance with the plan.
So I think the only issue is on the TEs, delete 2, we agree with 1 and 3.
Right.
I have a motion. I have a motion and a second to approve PUD 1648 with compliance with TEs 1 and 3, deletion of TE 2. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It's approved.
And item number 20 is PUD 1647 to rezone 2844 Northeast 23rd Street from R1 to PUD 1647.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Angelanis with Smith Roberts Balderschweiler, representing the owner. This site is currently occupied by an RV park, and the proposal for the PUD is to convert this to climate control storage units, enclosed boat and RV storage, covered storage, outdoor rent parking, wash bays, and some office space. And a couple of things I'd just like to point out quickly is a couple of the real advantages of this is right now the site is served by a sanitary sewer lagoon on the south side, and under our proposal we will have that closed in accordance with the EQ regulation to extend public sanitary sewer to the site. And the site is also right now served by wells, and we would close those in accordance with OWRB requirements and connect to city water as part of our proposal. I had the opportunity to talk to Commissioner Cooper this morning. I appreciate you reaching out to me, Commissioner. I just want to briefly go over a couple of the concerns that he expressed to me. One was about the finish of the buildings facing or along 23rd Street, and the design statement requires that all building sites facing and adjacent to Northeast 23rd Street shall be required to be finished, so they won't be metal buildings, and that's in paragraph 9.1 of the design statement. Another concern was lighting, and in the design statement it says to minimize light spillover on residential areas, outdoor lights will be directed away from any adjacent residential properties, and that can be accomplished by shields, shades, or other appropriate methods. So I think we've kind of addressed those. The last concern had to do with a statement in the design statement about off-street parking, shared parking. I agree with you that doesn't really, we'd be willing to take that out about any off-street parking. And so with that, we agree with the TEs, and be happy to answer any questions.
I had a couple questions about this. Those of you who were here will remember that we had some issues with respect to mini storage, the visibility of the metal part of it, as out on the Kilpatrick especially was the one that I remembered especially. And so I was thinking that the language of not visible from is actually better than faced. You know, if we're talking about the portions of the buildings that are not visible from, and I would say any side street, then I would be okay with that. The portion facing the street is not necessarily enough to get you that closure, that close off that I think we'd be looking for.
We'd be open to changing that language, sure.
And then there's this odd language. It indicates that the office building will be 70% brick, veneer, masonry, rock, or stone masonry. But then down beneath that it says something about that where am I looking? That it can be artificial masonry and stucco can be employed. Can you tell me what that means exactly?
Like a veneer, I would assume, as opposed to actual brick and mortar.
So I guess the commissioners will have to decide what they think about that. I myself would prefer to see actual brick and mortar, but I think the question with respect to the lighting, you know, sometimes when areas are liable to affect nearby residential areas, we ask that the lighting is brought down, you know, that the height of the poles is not
be limited.
So to a, you know, 12 feet or 15 feet as opposed to...
I think it's 14, isn't it?
What is the standard?
I think it's 14. I think it's 14.
We could
like
add
we
that.
required for the car lot guys.
We
that
could
we've
add
had
that
that
language.
problem with.
Sure.
Okay, and that's from the ground as opposed to from some kind of concrete pedestal that they're built on, JJ?
Yeah.
That's from the ground level to the fixture.
Okay.
Right.
Then there's this language in here about these uses that are actually not permitted. Under 9.13 of the setback regulations, it talks about the following uses shall not be permitted within 150 feet of residentially zoned or used property. But as I understand it, none of these uses are permitted at all on site. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes. That's,
So you only want the three
that's
uses that you
superfluous
have.
language, we can take it out, I guess.
You only want these three uses that you've set out: personal storage, admin, and retail sales, accessory to your retail, your storage business, right? That's what
correct.
you want.
That's correct.
And you don't want any other uses?
No.
Okay.
And then there's some other superfluous language under 9.9 where it talks about any business or multifamily development. There's not going to be any multifamily development on this site, is there?
I'm sorry, what paragraph are you in?
We're talking about on page 5, section 9.9, under the signage regulations. It says a sign that contains the name of any business and/or multifamily development. There's not going to be any multifamily development on this site, is there?
No.
Okay. I just want to be clear.
I still have several issues. I think that, and I'm not even sure that we're going to get to some satisfactory resolve with everything, but tell me a little bit about the entrances that you're asking and requesting. What does the entryways look like? We don't have a clear picture of what that really looks like on this design. So can you tell me what the entryways look like? Because according to the staff report, you're wanting two entryways, one on either side of the property, I assume,
And it's just
that drives you into being too close to the adjacent properties.
Lance, do you have the master plan?
Right now, for the existing mobile home park, there's only one entrance, right?
Right, okay. Yeah, I've taught there. We are requesting the two entrances there, one on each side of the property to allow circulation through the site.
And that pushes you into being, are you able to get the 200 feet that's necessary in between those two entrances?
In between those two, the site is 330 feet wide, I believe. So,
Is there conflict with adjacent sites?
Yes. Yes, it pushes it into actually being too close to the adjacent sites.
that wasn't, one of the comments from one of the, in the TEs, but
Do you need the two because of the sign? I'm just curious, because of your boat and RV?
Yeah.
Because of the trailer lengths?
Yes.
And the
in order to be able
size
to
of the
circulate them
RVs?
out.
Was that one of the concerns?
Yes.
Was
Yeah.
curious
We
about
get-
that, to that point, that they wouldn't have enough turn radius if they only had, because some of those self-storage units get pretty tight on turn radius, that you might have a problem with your maneuvering the larger vehicles in and out of the site with only one entrance.
So can we get a line call from staff here? I mean, do they have the separation? They have enough room on site to have two driveways?
They have enough room on site. It is a little close to the drive on the west. I think we recognize, too, that RV establishment has very little traffic that comes in and out.
storage units, they're good neighbors. I mean, generally, if they're kind of kept relatively clean, they don't look all that great, but for traffic, people coming and going, and things like that, they're not that bad. And the RV guys, I mean, shoot, they're going to come down. They're even, they don't come too much. That's my understanding from talking to some people that I had another matter with. So from that perspective, there is a value in that particular space, Lee.
I did have one other question, I'm sorry. We have a notation in the staff report, site-proof screening may consist of the side of a proposed building if said building results in appropriate screening. That side is not going to be a metal side, is it? Screening a metal building on the property line is not what I think of when I think of screening, so.
Yeah, as shown on the master plan, we are proposing site-proof fencing around the whole site. So if on the east side there, where all the self-storage units are, there will be a site-proof fence on the east side there. If it makes you uncomfortable, we could change that also, that if the structure is to be used as site-proof fencing, we would finish the side that access the screening.
There you go.
But right now, the way we have it laid out, that's moot. But
Yeah, I think that would make me feel much more comfortable. So there's nobody signed up to speak. Do we have a?
I have.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm so sorry.
I have a couple more questions. So how are you going to, say it again, how are you going to address then the site-proof screening? What are you going to do? You're going to finish those buildings, or what are you doing?
No, the plan is to, as shown on the master, is to have site-proof fencing on the east side, all around the site.
And is that going to be 8 foot?
What did we say in there? We've got it called out there. If that's the requirement, I think we may have said 6, but I'm not for sure. Let's see, landscape buffers. Okay. Screening, okay. Not less than a 6 foot is what it says, and no greater than an 8 foot is what it says in the design statement right now.
I understand, and I'm asking for 8 foot.
Okay, well, if that's what you want, we can do that, absolutely.
And then on, you probably know this, is it going to be gated in hours of operation?
Yes.
Particularly for any of your retail?
It is gated. I'm not sure what the hours of operation are going to be. I'd have to get back with my owner, but if that, I don't know, is that a concern, or is that something that you need us to add into here on in the design statement?
You're talking about when the office is open as opposed to when people can come in and out.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's not addressed in the design statement. But again, if going forward, if you chose to recommend approval, that's something we could work out going forward to council.
Did you have a specific request you wanted to make with respect to the hours of operation?
No, I don't have a specific request. I just think it needs to be addressed. Yeah, just think it needs to be addressed.
The retail operation would be normal business hours, I'm sure. Might have to be not just 5 days a week, though.
Here, though, the retail operation is only in connection with the storage business, so, okay.
Typically, it's like 8 to 6, Monday through Saturday, and then noon to 6 on Sunday is what I've seen for other similar operations,
I think we could move
Which-
that.
you know, it's just, you know, like an office, for lack of a better way to put it. So.
Of course,
that's
access.
all right, 8 to 6, Monday through 7, we make it 7, I don't, you know.
8 to 6.
Monday through Saturday, Monday through Saturday, noon to 6 on Sunday.
Well, he's saying he can live with it, so that's fine, but I'm not sure
Do we
why
have-
limit it in the morning. I mean, if someone was coming at 7 a.m., we're getting pretty detailed, but I wouldn't be too restrictive. If he wants to be open at 7 a.m.
Doesn't bother me. I'm just giving it, I'm giving.
The more flexibility, you have, the better
go
we like
bys
it,
here.
obviously. Yeah, yeah. 7 to 6 would be fine.
That's fine with me. Okay?
Any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion? We do? We do have a motion? No, I'm asking.
All right. Anything else?
Including all of what we've discussed, with those additional TEs, we move for approval.
Okay, so just so for our own knowledge, we're going to have it you're going to have site-proof screening, 8-foot site-proof screening around the entire property. Where a building is used for that screening, it will be finished, not metal. 8-foot fence, as we've said. You're going to have the 2 drives, as we've said. It's gated. Your hours of operation are 7 to 6 Monday through Saturday, and 12 to 6 on Sunday, because Lee would want you to come to church, and I do too, for that matter.
Well, I need to be there, so.
And so you're not going to do any multifamily development.
No.
And the only uses you're going to use on the property are those that are set out in section 8.1.
And we're going to change the language with respect to unfinished surfaces or to read not visible from.
Not visible, yeah, that's right.
From the adjoining street.
That's right. Is there anything else we had?
I think that's it. That's all the notes I have.
That's the motion.
The motion.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to approve PUD 1647 with the amendments just recited. You'll cast your votes for me, please. It is approved.
Thank you.
We did mention a 14-foot lighting, right?
That's the standard.
Okay.
Yeah.
The remaining items were continued or withdrawn.
Okay. See if I can find where I was on my list here. Then, we don't have any additional items from anybody present, I guess. Do we have reports from planning commission committees? I don't think so. We don't have any standing committees, do we? Sir, did you have something you wanted to tell us?
Are you here for a particular matter?
I'm sorry, you're not I have a request for restaurant and beverage at the Twin Mountains RV Resort.
I think we approved that.
Oh my gosh, you poor soul. We approved that as part of the consent docket at the very beginning. You could have gone home a long time ago.
That's why I didn't get it.
Planning commission members,
Madam Chairwoman, if I may.
we're so happy to have had your company, but
Madam Chairwoman, a comment from me, if you don't mind.
Please.
Some compliments, both to you as our chairwoman. Thanks for leading us, filling the shoes of Chairman Yokel. I appreciate it. You run a really good meeting. And second, the staff. I really appreciate the professionalism. My first meeting, but everything put together so well beforehand, being so well prepared, the whole staff. So thank you guys for running a great process. I won't comment regarding the representatives on behalf of applicants, because there's one still here. I don't want them to get a big head, but do appreciate the comments from the citizens and the applicants. But thank you guys for a good process.
we're so glad to have you with us. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Planning department?
Nothing other than welcome, and we're very happy to have you.
Development Services, anything you want to say? Municipal Counselor's Office? No, everybody's ready to go home, I can tell. I know how this deal works. No citizens to be heard, we got rid of all of them. Other business? No. Adjournment, do I have a motion? Second? I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Cast your votes, please. We're adjourned.